saved. I could never serve the passion or the fire or the man or for sight how I am. Ain't nobody asking, I'll be basking in my liberty, cause slavery is real. Doesn't mean the shackles gotta be revealed. Fighting with my pen, it's the closest thing to steal, and it's what they wanna steal. There's value in the word, gotta figure out the real. We're juggling the rest.
guys, it's Wednesday. Apologize for the lighting, I'm still sorting that out. I probably need to get a key light up here. I don't have one. It's on my list of things to do. But welcome in. For anybody who might be new, my name is Meshla, and I am primarily an audiobook streamer. I write and read my own Star Wars fanfiction, and have been writing it cooperatively and solo for the last 25 years. Yeah, that feels really weird to say. Just putting that out there. Yeah. So tonight we're going to be reading the first 4 chapters, hopefully, of the story called Age of Darkness. I recently had to sit down and rearrange the story order, so it was actually in the correct order. Glad I did that. So we're going to read the first 3 to 4 chapters of Age of Darkness this evening. And I hope you guys have your snacks, your blankies, your drinks, because it's time to get cozy. Although the story doesn't necessarily start off cozy. But anyway, grab your snacks, grab your blankies, and settle in. Right. Let me move my stuff around. Yeah, on my list of things to get is a key light, because lighting is kind of terrible right now. It's unfortunately the only option I have right now. I have a desk lamp over here, so I'm adjusting it as best as possible, but it's unfortunately kind of one-sided over here. So yes, a key light is on my list of things to get, because I want consistent lighting up here. Sorry. I mean, yes, but I would have thought that you guys would have liked to see my face better. I mean, I don't mind the mood lighting, but some people, even with the closed captioning, like to see my face. So I'm trying to be cognizant of that. So, also, yes, these headphones are actually quite comfy. Where am I here? So the last time we were here, we read the very short story called To Honor the Departed, which was all of 2.5 chapters because it never got finished. And we read the prologue to Age of Darkness, which left a lot of suspense. As I said, this story does not start off all cozy. It kind of dumps you in the deep end of all the action. So, what do you say? Should we get started? Give me just one sec. Interesting. Oh goodness, did I break closed captioning again? Oh dear. I may have broken the closed captioning again. 1 second. Oh, it's being super slow. Let me know if you guys can see that closed captioning, because it's finally showing up for me. It's just being super duper slow. Let me know if you actually see that, because it is showing up for me. I can also test on Twitch as well. Let's see. Maybe? Huh, that's really weird. Oh, you might have to click the CC button down in the bottom right corner. It is there. And now that it's finally caught up for me. There's a slight delay on my end when I look at it on Twitch, but it is there. If you are not seeing it, please make sure you hover over the bottom of the stream and click the little button that says CC. I did a whole bunch of stuff with OBS the last couple of days, so may have broken something. apologies in advance, there might be scuff. I've been doing a lot of messing around in OBS and Cam Studio to get stuff working. Also, yes, I'm wearing a Star Wars t-shirt. I'm actually wearing an appropriately themed t-shirt. So, kudos. Alright. But yes, I mean, I'm a giant fan of mood lighting, but I would kind of like to have some consistent lighting. I'm thinking if I can get a key light somewhere up here, that might be good. So. Oh yes, that button. That one that actually does things. Definitely that one. I have my, just to kind of test things, I have my Twitch stream up on my browser, and I'm just checking it for various things that I can't see through the chat feed or through what I'm seeing in OBS. Like, I can see the captions generated, but they're not popping up on the screen like you guys would see them. You guys should see them kind of in the bottom edge of the screen. Yeah, underneath my image. I tried to leave enough space for that. But yes, that button. That fancy looking one that says CC. Welcome back, Morgana! Good to see you. I'm just experiencing a little bit of scuff today. Trying to get things working. You know, it's kind of normal around here to have at least a little bit of scuff. So, I was just getting settled, and we're gonna start some reading today. Been kind of building up to this since the last time I read. Digging into Age of Darkness proper this evening. It's really good to see you back. I appreciate you. And anybody else who's here that I didn't catch, welcome in. Also, if you're seeing blue, it's because I got my new lenses in my glasses. And they have blue blockers, because I stare at a computer all day. Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm actually going to be reading tonight. Alright, so let me... You are not the scuff, Ray. Don't even say that. You are totally not the scuff. I'm talking about technology scuff, as in things not working. I'll let you guys in on a little secret. The reason why I even mentioned the scuff is because I spent the entire, hour and a half-ish before stream fixing things with Cam Studio because it decided it didn't want to play nice. But it appears to be behaving for the moment. So, we're going to continue as planned. Okay. Hey, Sin! I know, they weren't an hour and a half ago. You may, although be aware that I will be reading, so I may not be paying as much attention to chat as I would be on a workshop stream. I will try, but there are no guarantees. Because I will be looking at this other screen. Alright. Need more fluids. Okay. Thank you for that, Morgana. I will read that when I get a moment. Probably when I get to the end of my chapter. Oh, yes, definitely take it easy. Take it easy there, Sin. And I will take a second to look at chat when I have a moment. Okay. Age of Darkness, Chapter 2. Blast it, Brink, where are you? Micron Din muttered under his breath. The rogue stood at a junction in the corridor with his back to the wall. Cautiously, he risked a glance around the corner. He quickly pulled back as 15 blaster bolts slammed into the opposite wall. There were 20 of them, and they had an E-Web repeating blaster set up behind a small barricade. Effectively, they had the only passage back to his ship closed off. He could see them now running their filthy paws over the Firebird. Just then, Brink came running up from the opposite direction. Mick grinned at the old smuggler and tossed a flashbang around the corner. "What took you so long?" he shouted over the sound of the explosion. "I had a little company," Brink gasped as he slid to a cover position next to Micron. "Had to backtrack a bit. Who tripped the damned alarms?" "I don't think anyone did." Mick shook his head and blindly fired around the corner to keep the mercenaries pinned down. "I think they knew we were coming." Brink swore. "How?" "Well, now that you're here, you can set your blaster to stun and we'll keep one alive long enough to ask him," Micron said, holstering his DL-40 and drawing his lightsaber. "What about Nick and Vince?" Brink asked. "If the imps know we're here, they'll have a similar welcome party back at their own ship." "Yeah," Mick nodded as he began to draw on the Force. "And do you think we'll hear the end of it if they get out of this mess before we do?" Point taken. Brink flipped the safety on his blaster to stun. Smiling, Micron leaped into the corridor. A torrent of red light lanced out to the rogue, and he waded into it. His silver blade traced large arcs through the air, intercepting blaster bolts and sending more than a few back to their owners. Slowly, Micron advanced on the mercenaries, his hands and his blade moving in time with the rhythm of the Force. The E-Web continued to pump kilojoules of energy out at a pace that even Mick was struggling to keep up with. But the rogue wasn't worried. Sailing over his shoulder, he caught a glint of steel. With a little nudge in the Force, he directed Brink's throw directly into the nest. Mercenaries dove for cover, but it was too late. The fragmentation grenade reduced the E-Web and the mercenaries around it to a smoking ruin. And Mick had his opening. In a flash of silver light, he appeared at the end of the corridor, mercenaries falling to their deaths behind him as their bodies fell apart. "Ew!" Brink complained as he made his way to the hangar door. "For sake, Mick, do you have to always make such a mess?" The rogue shrugged as he touched the door, stretching his senses into the room beyond. 20 more inside," he said. "And one's on top of my ship." "Say no more, my lad," Brink sighed. "So much for leaving one alive." The old smuggler drew his other blaster and set both to kill. Micron smiled darkly. "On 3. 1. Brink began the count. 2. Mick pressed his hand to the sensor plate near the door and they whisked open. 20 mercenaries stood before them, armed to the teeth. And I thought fact-finding missions were boring, Mick mused silently. 3! They both cried as they plunged into the fray. That went well. Nick's voice, only slightly distorted, lost none of its sarcasm over the comm unit aboard the Firebird. The Firebird and the Dragon floated in a sector of space devoid of anything. Vince and Nick had flown the Dragon in for this particular run, as Nick's Phantom was still in the shop undergoing the installation of a new cloaking shield. "Yes," Vince said. Sarcasm. How quaint. "You guys didn't happen to keep one alive, did you?" Mick asked. "Yeah, we're fixing him tea right now," Nick quipped. Okay. I don't suppose the two of you have any ideas on how they knew we would be here?" "None," Vincent said. "Though, with Sylvia Iceheart running things in the Empire, I suggest we try to rectify the situation post-haste." "Aye," Brink nodded from the co-pilot's chair aboard the Firebird. "Well, sitting here isn't doing us any good. Let's head back to Coruscant. We'll commandeer a table at the crash and try to wrap our heads around how the Empire seems to know what we're doing before we do." "Roger that," Nick agreed. "Who's buying this time around?" "You," Nick said as he pointed the Firebird onto a heading for home. "No matter how often you ask, it's still your turn." He could hear Vince's laughter over the open comm, and he grinned as he pulled back on the levers and the Firebird lurched into hyperspace. Coruscant. Imperial Palace. The Din residence. "Money!" Mick called as the entry doors had shut behind him. I'm home. I kind of figured that out when you calmed me from the hangar, nerf herder, Ari replied from the living room. She sat on the sofa with a glass of blue milk and a sandwich. She had their favorite show paused on the holoprojector. I know, Mick shrugged as he pulled off his boots in the entryway. I just like saying it. He crossed to the back of the couch, leaned over, and kissed his wife on the forehead as she leaned back to look up at him. Where's my little princess? Daddy! Mick whirled as Evelina came running from her room and he scooped her into his arms. Hey, kiddo. He grinned. I missed you. What did you and Mommy do today? I missed you too. The 3-year-old wrapped her arms around the rogue's neck as he carried her into the living room and plopped down on the sofa with her in his lap. Mommy and I went to the zoo. We saw the baby Nexu and even a Dianoga. Daddy, can I have a baby Nexu? I asked Mommy, but she said to ask you. Micron laughed. I'll bet she did. He cast a wry grin in Ari's direction. Well, a baby Nexu is a big responsibility. You'd have to feed it, clean up after it, and probably groom it. And they don't stay babies forever. Nexu get very big, and I don't know if we have enough room here. I know, Daddy, Evelina said, determined. But I'd be a good mommy. I'd feed it and take care of her, and I heard you talking to Mommy about moving to Corellia and getting a house. Would we have enough room then? How did you... Mick again looked to his wife. She goes stronger in the Force every day, Ari said. I think she's learning to listen on our little conversations. Yeah, Evelina nodded enthusiastically. I've been studying real hard. Very impressive, Mick said. But you shouldn't eavesdrop on other people's conversations, Princess. It's not nice. I'm sorry, Daddy, she said. I won't do it again. It's okay, Mick lifted her chin. We're still just talking about moving to Corellia. But I know you'd be okay with it now. I tell you what, you keep up with your studies and keep your room clean and I'll consider getting you a baby Nexu. Deal? Deal. Evelina shook her father's hand. Mick and Ari just laughed. Why don't you go get your coloring book? Said after a moment. Mommy and I want to watch our show. Okay, Daddy. Evelina hopped down from his lap and skipped off to her room. Mick watched her go and smiled before turning to look over at Ari. So, how'd the mission go? Ari asked. Complete and utter failure, Mick sighed. Somehow, Iceheart Jr. knew we were coming. We got in okay, but the whole way out was a firefight. We didn't even get to the records room. Shazza, Ari swore silently. Mick, this is getting out of control. They took out the Chiss Ascendancy for Force sake. What is going on in the galaxy? I don't know, Princess. Mick shook his head, but we need to figure it out. And soon. Didn't we retire from this sort of thing like 3 years ago? Ari asked with a smirk. I seem to recall. The rogue scratched his chin before shrugging. Well, it'll keep for a little while at least. Are we all set for the trip to Catan tomorrow? All our bags are packed and Stefan's expecting us, Ari said with a nod. That he and Jade had the guest house all prepped. I think he's going to ask you to come teach at his Praxium again. He knows I can't do that, Mick said. At least not full-time. I like Catan, and Stefan's a great friend, but I couldn't live there. It's too... perfect? I was going to say remote, but yeah, that too, Mick replied with a nod. Well, he's still going to try. Ari leaned her head onto Mick's shoulder. And you can't really blame him for that anyway. He did want me to let you know he'd be bringing the grill out for dinner. It's summer there now. Fantastic, Mick beamed. You make sure to pack us a few bottles of Varwin's Reserve, yeah? I know it's hard for them to get that stuff out there. Yes, dear, Ari said. It'll be good to see everyone again, even with all that's going on. San and Callie even managed to get the time off. Yeah, Mick agreed. Feels like it's been ages. I can't believe Card's boy is going to be 18. I hope he likes what we got him. Rogue, Ari laughed. We bought an 18-year-old boy a speeder bike. He'll be thrilled, but I think Stefan's going to kill you. Micron just shrugged and cast a trademark grin. Nah, he said. He'd mentioned he wanted to spar during our visit. He always fights better when he's just a bit ticked. Whatever you say, love. Ari kissed him on the cheek and hit resume on the holoprojector. Evelina brought her coloring book out to the living room and set up her station at the low table in front of the sofa. More content than he'd been in a life age, Micron settled in for a night at home with the family. Things in Galaxy were heating up. He figured he could enjoy one slow night before he and his family were thrust into the thick of it again. And we're going to the next chapter. Oh, we have an ad starting in just under 5 minutes. So, keep that in mind. I will try to keep an eye on that. The ad breaks are a minute and a half, and I do try to not read during them, because I know not everyone is able to get rid of the ads. I appreciate you being here during the ads, and it's a great time to go get a drink, grab a snack, have a stretch, things of that nature. So I will read what I can in the meantime. Maybe just 1 second. At 19. Chapter 3. Jedi Temple, Coruscant, Zan and Callista's quarters. It felt like ages since Callista had been able to sleep in. She hadn't realized how much she'd missed or even needed it. They both did. That thought brought a somewhat sad smile to her face as she turned and snuggled into Zan's warm embrace. She knew that the relative peace wouldn't last. Events over the last few years had told her that, and she loathed politics, but it had increasingly wormed its way into the Order over the previous 2 or 3 years. But what worried her the most were the reports of knights simply vanishing while on missions. She sighed and turned onto her back, laying her head on Zan's chest as she looked up to the ceiling. Up already, Maven? A deeply accented voice said, bringing her out of her contemplative mood. It's 05:15, you know. It's the 3rd time this week you've woken, and today you could have slept in. The voice belonged to her husband Zan, who ran his hands through Callista's dark hair and sighed. You should let me worry about this. Callista chuckled and turned over, snuggling into his chest. Nasita, I can't help it. Waking up this early is so ingrained I don't even need an alarm anymore. She groaned and buried her face in the cool fabric of her pillowcase for a moment. I know. It just worries me. We lost so many at Renvar and then missed, and now the knights just vanish. She swore softly and scrubbed her face with her hands for a moment. I guess I'm trying to occupy myself with something besides medical reports for once. She grinned lopsidedly. Zan frowned. It was bad enough he was occupied with every kind of report he could get his hands on concerning those missing knights. His missing knights. Since Kard had retreated to Catan, Aenar disappeared, and Micron and Ari had now retired, only so Micron could fulfill some Han Solo-like stupidity, as far as Zan was concerned. He and Callista were the most senior of masters available on Coruscant. That gave him even more access to information and contacts than he had previously. If it weren't for the fact they were still relatively young, it would have given them more than a few gray hairs. You mean the lack of bodies, right? He ran his free hand down Callista's spine and sighed. Just more Ossic to deal with. At this point, I'm surprised that Stefan hasn't just handed over control of the Order to us yet. We've been criffing dealing with everything else. Give me 1 second. I mean, you never know. We'll find out. She sighed contentedly at his touch and snuggled close again. Look, the lack of bodies worries me and frankly creeps me out. She sighed and nodded. I'd wondered that too. He's hardly on Coruscant these days, what with the Proxium occupying most of his time. I feel like we're flying a bit blind here without more input from the other masters, what few remain. Zan laughed, though it was bitter. You know what I think of all this. Stefan retreated because he felt as if he almost brought disaster to the Order. Micron is off playing Han Solo, and badly. Never mind coercing Brink back into that criffing hollow fantasy of his, but filling Ari with the notion that now that she's a mother, her job is done. Ha! He spat and pulled out of the embrace, not due to anger at his wife, but out of frustration. It was bad enough that Stefan allowed Einar to shab off in depression, but everyone else got the bright idea to do the same. Platonla actions within the Jedi, and they shabla wonder why we Mandos get bent out of shape with them. I'm gonna stop right there because the ad is about to start. That was actually really good timing on my part. Yay! Go get a drink, have a snack, and I'll see you back here in a minute and a half, as soon as the ad starts. Now it's gonna make a letter out of me. But yes, I think you pegged that one right, Wraith. Yep, we'll be here. Works for me. There's the ad. That's pretty good. Yeah, I try really hard not to read during the ad breaks because I feel like it's kind of rude because ads are just a fact of life on Twitch. So try to be aware of that and not read. But that's awesome. Really good progress on your first chapter. And I appreciate you hanging out. I'm gonna hang on a minute. Man, I am just a tad chilly. Here we go. I'm getting a long sleeve shirt because I am chilly. Yeah, not everybody is subbed, so I try to be aware of that because ads are just a fact of life, unfortunately. Yeah, I haven't gone so far as naming my chapters yet, but maybe someday. Oops, I'm making a ton of noise. Maybe someday. Yeah, my arms were just a little bit chilly. Alright. That's a little better. There we go. Kind of hiding my shirt, but you know what? Better to be warm. Wraith is off making his food, so I'm gonna chill for just a minute longer. I don't want him to miss anything. And he's back. You know how I know? Because he did a stretch redeem. Please make sure that you are stretching and taking care of your spine and your neck and your shoulders. Because you only got one. Well, two shoulders. But you want to take care of your spine and your back. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Alright. I know, right? Okay. Callista frowned at him as he pulled away. She moved closer and wrapped her arms around his waist and held him close. Tiarika, you're the only one man. You can't fix everything, you know. She rested her chin on his shoulder before massaging the muscles there gently. Deal with what you know you can. I don't know Einar well enough to comment. As to Stefan, I'd really like his input, but he's doing an important service to the Order, training more Jedi. Mick? Well, that's Mick for you. He needs a break just like we do, though he could have picked something better. She shrugged slightly. While I don't agree with it or with Ari's retirement, it was prudent considering her condition. The constant stress she was under as head of Galactic Defense isn't helpful when you're trying to raise an Ikkad. A real warrior can be both a warrior and a father or mother. For Force's sake, she still could have been a Shabla consultant or diplomat, even. I mean, you try dealing with idiots with their collective heads up their throat and shebs. The Kirt Sod acting out their sick fantasies on Mandawade, and the Tin Can suddenly acting competent. The Shabla Latrice ascendancy fell, Alika, and no one said boo. But it's left me to deal with the Chief of State and send agents into the Remnant and have them disappear. I act like a flipping politician most days rather than a Jedi and watch as everything I do disintegrates around me. But yeah, let's leave everything to the young ones. They were there when things looked bleak before. They don't need our help to avoid similar situations now. Let's just worry about us for a while, he growled. If Del were here, he'd shoot the lot of them, and I'm close to doing that myself. She sighed. Zan was right, of course. What would you suggest? She asked, quietly, her voice close to his ear as she rested her chin on his shoulder. It's obvious they're still needed. Zan broke from her embrace again, as he leaned over to the nightstand on his side of the bed and grabbed at something. As he leaned into her arms again, he initiated the embrace this time. I received a priority message last night as I was heading back to quarters. Sharon flagged me down with it. This. He handed her the datapad. It seems Stefan wants a little family get-together on Catan in the next few days. Mick and Ari want to pick us up. Callista raised an eyebrow as she glanced down, reading it with her head propped on his shoulder. It's been quite a while since we went to the Praxium. A day or two away from here might do us both some good. She smiled slightly. Rinius was turning 18. The boy had grown up so fast. She remembered the first time she'd met him. He couldn't have been more than 11 or 12. I'm up for it. Though, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least talk to Mick and Ari. She looked meaningfully at Zan. Shab, Evelina must be at least 3 now. Zan nodded. Yeah. According to Brink, she also has the Dinsile self-assurance already. Though in a much sweeter manner than Mick. He said she's even catching on to Mick and Ari's telepathy talks. He chuckled. Well, I'd like to see the squirt again. I plan on bouncing Ari off every wall in the training rooms once we get to Catan. She may have resigned her rank when she became New Republic military, but now that she's not, I intend to reactivate both of them, whether they like it or not. And that means a little Sheb's kicking is in order. She grinned at him. I like the idea, though I'm not sure Stefan would approve of using the training rooms for that. What about the training circle at his home, or the hold of the Firebird? Something tells me we should keep this private. As in, just family knowing. Zan actually glared. This time, I don't care if Stefan likes it. Shab, Calica, you know the visions I've been having. She flinched, but didn't look away. And she only nodded. She'd caught snatches of them, as much as he tried to shield her. She frowned. I agree that something needs to be done. Just not sure if being that public will help or hinder the purpose you're trying to achieve. Public gets everyone to see how serious this is, Tiarika, he said firmly. But he did so as he soothed her by running his hands through her hair again. Wounds in the Force, an empire set on dominating and subjugating the galaxy, a terrorist force that will not be content with just the Mandawade Empire and the Hutts eating star systems for lunch, he sighed. If anything, I'm not being brutal enough to drive this home. Callista sighed as well. She could tell there was no point in arguing. When he'd made up his mind, that was it. I think we all need a wake-up call anyway. Zane nodded, and then glanced at the chrono as he growled. Well, I've got to get up. One more fracking meeting with the New Republic Department of Defense and last-minute briefings, and then I can get ready to go. She swore softly. She hated that he kept getting pulled into politics. Will you at least eat before you go, Sherika? He pulled himself out of bed and began throwing on robes, which a few years ago would have been odd, but nowadays was becoming more common. I'd love to, but if I don't get going quickly, Sharon will have my head as a flimsy weight. After the Department of Defense meeting, I'll get some caf in my office and call down to the kitchen for something light. Zanika, you need to eat. She fixed him with a glance as she slid out of bed, pulling on a sleeping robe as she approached. Her fingers switched his tunic straight before she brushed a few errant pieces of fluff from his shoulder. Zan merely chuckled. He knew from experience this was her area of control, and he'd have hell of a time satisfying her, if ever. Tiarika, the DoD doesn't care if I've eaten or not. They care if I'm punctual. Maxwell still hasn't removed the pole from his shebs. Callista rolled her eyes. She'd always disliked Maxwell. At least take a couple of nostrils with you. You can eat them before you get there. Zan laughed again. Udesi, Calica. You win. I'll take them. Happy now? He grinned lopsidedly at her. I am. She replied and stood on her toes to kiss him gently before she turned to the kitchen, pulling the container from the chiller. She wrapped 2 nostrils in parchment paper and tucked them into his hand. Zan shook his head and chuckled before hearing his comm beep. Then an annoyed voice spoke, the only Padawan in the Order allowed to get away with such behavior. Damn it, Zan, are you on your way or what? Maxwell dropped in too early. Get your Mando Shebs in gear. Callista grinned, barely stifling a giggle. She kissed him quickly, gave him one more once-over, and then steered him to the door. Zan sighed. On my way, Sharon. Keep him occupied. I know. Give him a kid's coloring pad, which should keep him busy for several weeks on the first page alone. That caused Callista to burst out laughing. She shook her head at him. Aye, distract him for about 5 minutes, Sharon. Zan will be right along. Zan grinned at his wife and leaned over to kiss her quickly. I'll call you when I'm free and on the way home. You better, she said as she returned and gently pushed him into the hall. The door closed quietly behind him, cutting off the sound of Sharon still chattering away. Zan's office. As Maxwell made his way out, Zan was tempted to throw his flimsy-weight sculpture of Cad Haranguir at the retreating form of the general, but thought better of it. He liked the sculpture too much. Sharon, DoD medicine stat, get it, yay. He groaned as he placed his head in his hands on the desk. Sharon glanced at the retreating gray-clad form for a long moment before she nodded and slipped into the small kitchenette along the back wall of Zan's office. Being the head of Jedi intelligence sure had its perks. She hummed for a moment as she pulled a dark glass bottle from the chiller, poured a few measures of the narcoleth into a tumbler, and added some ice. She found some more of the nostrils that Master Callista had made, and she warmed those up, piling them on a plate before she brought both to Zan and plopped down in the chair in front of his desk, sipping on a Netragal. Zan smiled as he eyed the nostrils on his desk and then to Sharon sipping a Netragal. I see we're both rubbing off on you, he said, before biting into a roll. He chewed and swallowed before asking, So, am I dreaming, or did that conversation go absolutely nowhere? Sharon grinned at him momentarily before groaning and pinching her nose, and taking a deep breath or two. The Alaran excels at the art of leading the conversation in circles. He very neatly avoided answering our questions. However, what interested me was not what he actually said, but what he didn't. We might learn more from looking at what he conveniently left out. Zan raised an eyebrow at Sharon. It continually amazed him how naturally she was picking up details in conversations. It had led them to discover Isard's assassination of the Moff's Council 2 years ago. Go on. You've got my attention. She grinned. He kept going on and on about how much the war effort is costing the Republic and how much the Republic needs us and our skills. Yet what help do we get from them? They didn't provide the funds to rebuild when the temple was attacked a few years ago, and they seem to forget we are few now, especially with the disappearances. She frowned. It reminds me almost of how the Old Republic used the Jedi during the Clone Wars. There we go. Zan nodded and frowned. For all of Luke Skywalker's genius in changing how the Jedi Order dealt with things like families and relationships, he did again tie them back into service with the New Republic, a fact that non-Republic members such as himself chafed under at times. You mean as generals and commanders of the military, relying on Jedi-led efforts of intelligence and diplomacy? Precisely. And with so few of us left, it almost guarantees the fact that we'll be gone sooner rather than later, regardless of the various academies. She groaned and slumped in her chair. Sometimes I wish I couldn't read this stuff from people. It's shabla depressing. Thane sat and thought on that for a moment. What you are suggesting is that the Chief of State, the Senate, and the Department of Defense are playing the Jedi in hopes of actually discrediting us, or worse. She nodded, the expression on her face looking like she tasted something awful. It's almost like what Dala tried to do while she was Chief of State during Skywalker's time. He had to go into exile to evade prison for his crimes. Zan shuddered and sipped his narcolith. Should have asked for double. He looked at her. So in other words, we're perfect. We can't withdraw because we need the funding the New Republic supplies us with, and we can't go against the Senate because we'll get seen as Palpatine 2.0. Pretty much. Just the thought caused a cold lump to settle in her stomach. She took a few slow breaths as she tried to calm herself. As if things weren't already bad enough, he groaned and shook his head. Well then, on that bright note, what of the latest team that we've sent into Imperial space? Have they reported in at all? Sharon frowned briefly and pulled out her secure datapad, scrolling through the message logs. The last message we got was 6 hours ago. They just inserted into Bastion, nothing else. Any reports on movement or anything else of note in their summary? Zan asked, knowing it would likely be the same answer he always got. Sharon made a noise of disgust, muttering a curse in Mandoa. Nothing. Wait. She scrolled back up and read again. There was a mention of increased military traffic in the area, but that was it. No other details. They probably didn't have time. Zan stood and paced behind his desk, sipping at the narcolith. And the diplomatic envoy to Nahoda, has there been any success in cutting the taxation level for travelers through hut space? Her frown deepened as she pulled up the message he asked for. Very little. The Hutts still think that the exorbitant rates are warranted. The costs of the war, they say. Her tone made it clear that she disagreed with that assessment. Might as well go for the trifecta, he thought. Latest reports out of the Mandalorian Empire? Sharon sucked in a breath, her gaze flicking up to his for just a moment. She'd at least caught the gist of the thought. Chewing on her lower lip, she scrolled through the reports yet again. 2 more attacks by Kirtzad, Bandamir, and an attempt on Mendel Motors. What was the cost of the damages? Lives first, then credits. Zan sighed as he downed the rest of the strong Mandalorian whiskey. Bandamir, 300 dead. From the reports, most were farm workers caught in the open when the Kirtzad did a firebombing run on the fields. She swore softly. Mandalore, 50. They were trying to make a statement while keeping Mendel Motors intact. Bandamir, it looks like they intended to cripple the Empire's food supply and their military power. Sorry. I want an aid team with AgriCorps members sent to Mandayam within the day. Tell Mandalore that this is only a down payment from us. He'll understand, Zan said, his voice beginning to crack just a little. I'll get right on that, Sharon replied, her tone a little distracted as she began typing commands into her pad. Anything I can get you, Zan? She asked, a note of concern in her voice. Not at the moment, Sharon. Unless you can find me the cause for all of this, he said before smiling sadly. One last thing. Morale report of the Order. It's not good, she said quietly. There's hardly been anyone here since Mist. Most of the students have been moved to the academies in Catan or Chandrila, with many surviving knights and masters taking on teaching positions. We still have a few watchmen in service, but not many after Mist. Any calls and no confidence in my interim work since Stefan's departure? It doesn't look like it. It's been oddly quiet on that front, and I'm not sure why. We're getting resigned. That's why. I think everyone senses our doom approaching with these wounds and the Force appearing en masse. I think the Order is scared, Dan said in a deathly quiet voice. It's time for that to change. But how? Sharon asked, her tone laced with bewilderment. Remember that priority message you flagged me down with yesterday? He said, going to the conservator. He motioned to Sharon if she wanted another can. Yeah. What about it? She asked, nodding in assent at the silent question. It seems that Rhinius, one of Stefan's sons, is turning 18. The age of manhood, I guess, for you Arutize types. He smirked at Sharon, who returned it. Therefore, he wants a family gathering on Catan this week, and it looks like Callista and I are getting a ride there from her favorite Corellian and Koshakian. Sharon grinned, and then groaned. Master Micron, I like. Ari, though... She shrugged. There's just something about her. Zan smirked as he handed the can of Netrigal. Out with it. What is it you don't like? Sharon groaned and shooed him back to his desk as she popped the seal on the can. I don't know. She seems rather closed off or something. That's what happens when you spend most of your adult life in the New Republic military, Zan said. Knowing the information might change Sharon's perception. She is closed off, but there's some good reason for that. However, the bad reason is why Callista and I are going. She frowned for a moment before it sank in. You're upset at the state of the Order and how certain masters and knights have drifted? She hedged after a moment. Let me turn that down just a little. Sorry. I'm pissed at how my family forgot that they are warriors, that my family has responsibilities, Zan said, his voice darkening. To emphasize the next point, he leaned over the desk just a little, and I intend to remind her of this the hard way. And what of Master Micron? Sharon asked, raising an eyebrow. He's done playing as a Han Solo wannabe for a while. Callista will work on him. Zan chuckled. No one but you and Callista knows that I'm going to pull rank on both of them. Ari resigned from the Order and her Jedi rank when it conflicted with her military service. That no longer applies. Micron never resigned his rank, and Stefan left for Catan to train the next generation of Jedi, leaving us here to run the Order. They are going to both regret that decision and respect it. I'm going to make sure of that. And how exactly do you propose to accomplish this? Sharon asked, curiosity flooding her voice. I plan on bouncing Ari off every wall in Catan's training hall till she sees sense, while Callista does likewise with Mick. But my little chat with Ari will be broadcast live into every Jedi facility in the galaxy via the HoloNet. Sharon frowned. Are you sure that's wise? We would want to keep the location of the Chandrilan Academy secret. Catan's Praxium is already known. Zan grinned. The privilege of being in charge, Sharon. I know the comm codes for Chandrila, and I have an encryption code that no one but Stefan knows, and it's virtually impossible to slice or tag. She didn't ask how he had that. I know that you mean to use it as a wake-up call for the Order, but wouldn't that cause a lot of familial tension for you and Master Callista with Master Micron and Ari? For a while, sure. But my goal is not to place them under me. It's to get them to wake up and return to what they should be. I'm not doing this for leadership. I'm doing this to regain leadership. If I get this across, I'll take whatever comes out of that. Fair enough, Sharon answered with a smile. I'm just trying to consider it from all vectors. Zan grinned. Yeah, but this isn't an attack. It's a Dejaric game. But I've got the Mentavelian satrap in my hand, and I'm looking to end this game. Sharon just grinned and shook her head. Sometimes you confuse even me, she admitted, but she was beginning to understand how strongly he felt about this. Is there anything else you need? Yeah, I just hope I'm not too late, Zan said quietly before shaking his head. No, I think I've covered everything. So, congrats, Padawan. Intelligence will be in your hands until I return. Don't destroy the galaxy if you can help it, okay? She looked up at him in surprise. I'm not going with you? I need you here right now, Sharon. I can't funnel everything from Catan and keep an eye on the Galactic situation. I need someone who knows what the criff they're doing with these reports. Plus, the New Republic doesn't have codes for Catan or the Firebird, but you do. Thus, you can pull feeds for me if someone desperately needs me. We have an ad starting in 4 minutes and 55 seconds. Sharon sighed. All right, just be careful. I know the Katani Navy ousted the Kirtsad from Galan, but I've been getting reports of some spotted near the borders of Katani space. Zan grinned. Well then, it looks like this trip won't be all work and no play. Contact Ethan for me. Tell him to meet me on Catan. It looks like Marika gets to go hunting after all. That got a smile from Sharon. She'd met Ethan and Marin once while working together on a mission. She liked the younger girl very much. She'll enjoy that, I think. Zan smiled, but it was cold. We all will, Sharon. We all will. He stopped and looked at Sharon again closely. When I get back, I'm recommending you for the trials. Sharon sputtered in surprise, spitting her mouthful of Netricol on the desk, but she could tell he wasn't kidding. She just stared at him for a moment. I'm not kicking you out of working with me, but you're a quick learner. You have all the necessary skills and continue learning new things quickly. You're more than ready. We've been more like partners than a master and Padawan in the last year. It's time we made it official. She flushed in excitement, a grin spreading across her face before finally finding her voice long enough to say, Thank you, Master. She smirked, knowing he hated it when she addressed him by his title. Zan growled, Keep that up and I'll make you swim around Syntax too just for fun. He smirked. Who do we have for remaining masters here? I need to give Coruscant some leadership in our absence. Sharon flushed, but she was grinning. Master Valen, Master Azad, I think. Master Valen works in investigations. Master Azad was the Master Healer until Master Callista got the post. Zan nodded. Time for Master Azad to feel useful again. She'll be in charge of Coruscant till Stefan or I return. You have intelligence. Oh, tell Master Valen that Coruscant Security wants that report on had activities on the planet first thing Monday morning. Will do, Zan. Sharon told him with a grin as she jotted down a few notes on her datapad. Oh, make sure anything big gets funneled to me, even if it's Maxwell's Oxic. Leave Azad with as few headaches as possible. Otherwise she'll poison me and likely get Callista to help. Sharon snickered. I think I can manage that. Zan headed to the door. Oh, and one last thing. If you finish all the Netricol and the Conservator, you buy the next case. Force guide you well, Sharon. And with that, Zan headed out of the Intelligence Bureau and returned to his apartment. He had calmed Callista, letting her know that he was on his way. Sharon stared after him for a moment, still in a state of shock. He obviously felt she was ready for trials. Shaking her head, she got to work sending the dispatch orders for the group to go to Mandalorian space. She made sure to append her signature to the message and sent a copy directly to the Mandalore using a secure channel. Meanwhile, Callista had fallen asleep again, sleeping for a few more hours until the sun streaming through the windows woke her. She'd made lunch and packed what they might need for their trip. Zan keyed the door from the outside and found his wife scuttling around the apartment grabbing items for the trip. Shab, we're just going to Catan, Sierra, not Sicila. She rolled her eyes and then smiled. It's not that bad. I'm not bringing everything. Zan smirked. Yeah, you left the holo unit alone in the bed. Zan grinned evilly, jumping onto the freshly made bed and pulling her into his arms. Oh, that's better. She yelped in surprise, collapsing against his chest. I just made that. Well, let's unmake it, shall we? He grinned. She started to respond, but whatever she'd been about to say got swallowed up in the kiss. He always knew how to get her to relax. He eventually pulled away as the need for air went out over the kiss, but he held her in his arms for a minute anyway. I'll fix the bed up in a few. I just needed that. Long day, and yet another bad one. Bad news, I take it, she said, softly, laying her head on his shoulder. Zan sighed and filled her in on everything that had transpired during the day, including the good stuff, such as Sharon's reaction to the trial recommendation and who was in charge of Coruscant until they returned. So, that's it in a nutshell. The recent actions of the Senate and the Chief of State concern me. Sharon's right. We definitely need to bring that up with Stefan. Isn't Marika approaching the age for Forgotten? Zan nodded. It's time, Alec. It looks like this hunt will be her test. Oh, timing! Yes! That's the end of chapter 3. Go me! I'm getting good. Please tell me if I'm reading too fast. I'm trying to pace it better. So if I'm reading too fast, please tell me. Please tell me. Okay. I'm gonna look at my Discord while we have a second. Okay, I'm trying to not read too fast. Also, guys, there's our ad. I'm super excited because as I said, I've got new artwork coming. Probably within the next month or two, just waiting on some final stuff. And I should have a big announcement after Monday. So, super excited about that. I should probably wait till the ad is over to talk about that. I'll probably repeat myself, but it's fine. You know what? It's only 8, so I might read another chapter. After we finish this one, we'll see. Let's see. Okay. Alright. Oh man. This is getting interesting. Okay. Hey, Kurt. You missed the first couple of chapters, but welcome in. Good to see you. I hope you're feeling good tonight. Alright. Also, if anybody feels like I need to hydrate or get a snack or something like that, please feel free to abuse the channel points. That's what they're there for. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. As I was saying during the ad break, and I will repeat myself because not everybody has a subscription. So I have some more art coming from my artist. I'm waiting on the transition screens. I just got a preview and then a pretty finished version. So I'm just waiting for those to be sent my way. And I'm also waiting on, or no, not transitions. The like the starting now screen, the BRB, the ending screen, those are pretty much done. And so I'm just waiting for my artist to get me some preliminaries for transitions. So like kind of like what I have now for like the story time with Meshla, Whatever with Meshla, that kind of thing. The transitions. Waiting for some preliminaries on those. And I will hopefully have a big announcement after Monday. I know I mentioned something about it like a couple of months ago, but I was waiting for something I was waiting for some stuff to happen and it hasn't occurred yet. So I should hopefully have a big announcement after Monday. So, good news. Okay. So we're starting on chapter 4, and I may actually read another chapter. Give me just a second while I fix that. Doo-doo-doo. These are all kind of short chapters, but I'm also trying to not go super fast. Okay. And I know that there's a bit of a delay with the closed captioning. I do apologize for that. Just kind of par for the course. Alright. But yes, please feel free to abuse the channel points. That's why they exist. Pretty much all of my redeems are self-care related or related to channel content. So, please feel free to abuse those. That's why they're there. I mean, maybe I should use a different word. Avail yourself of. There you go. There's your word for the day. Avail. If you don't know what it means, look it up. Avail is the vocabulary word of the day. Also, I've been using a lot of Mandoa words in my chapters tonight. So if there's a word that you don't know, you can always ask in chat, because there was, I don't know, 6 or 8 in the last couple of chapters. There was a lot. So please feel free to ask in the chat. For the most part, they're kind of... You can kind of figure them out in context, but not always. So, yeah, please feel free to ask if there's something that you'd like me to translate when I next have a moment. Oh goodness. One sec. I was just double checking Discord for something. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Like I said, most of them, in the context of the chapter, you can pretty much figure them out. But yes. I think I misspelled it even myself. It's terrible. Oh. Anyway. Chapter 4. Yes, there's if you don't want me to curse, even Star Wars ones. Okay? If you don't want me to curse, because I usually don't, there is a redeem for that. It's 1,500 channel points. Somebody did that the last time I was reading, and it was quite funny because it's really hard. Because they're just in the context of the stories. So, if somebody wants to be a pain in my rear and make me not even read the Star Wars curses, you can do that, and I'll do my best. It's allowed. That's why it's a thing. Of course, that's gonna be fun. Okay. Well, somebody redeemed it one of the last times that I was actually reading, and it was quite funny. Because I was like, oh, now I have to not even do those. Okay. For transparency, I do try to keep my stream PG-13. Okay? So, because I occasionally have people in here from work, and people that I know from other places, so I try to keep it PG-13. Also to be within Twitch terms of service, try to keep it within that. So, just a little PSA. But yes, your vocabulary word for the day is avail. Instead of the other word I was using, because we don't want people to get the wrong idea. Indeed. I appreciate you, both of you, Wraith and Sniper. But yes. The vocabulary word of the day is avail. Alright. Chapter 4. Hatan. Asard's forces are claiming more territory, one master said from where they stood in the clearing in a valley not far from Mount Adon's monastery. With their push and takeover of the Chiss Ascendancy and their other pushes outward from their old borders, we've lost access to the crystal caves, not just at Ilum, but also on Dantooine. Stefan sat in the place on the rocks that he had selected when he chose the site for their meeting. With the Jedi High Council's approval, it was his idea to call for a convocation of all the masters, not only of the ones who'd survived the Battle of Mist, but also those knights that had shown the Council through their actions that they were ready to receive the rank and title. He had chosen this valley instead of the main hall of his praxium because he knew that the number of masters there, still smaller than had been at the battle, would distract his students. Dylan, who was recently promoted to the rank of master himself, just within the last year, was one of only the few masters not in attendance, as he oversaw the continuation of training at the monastery. Now the High Council was seated or standing along a wide ring of stones that Stefan had built a fair-sized fire in the center of, while the other masters gathered around them, some sitting, some standing or leaning against the trees close by, as the matters at hand were discussed by all of them. Throughout the time he'd been setting up and working through teaching the students at the Praxium, Stefan continued to hold meetings with the High Council. They often met in his study, here on Catan, or in their chambers at the temple. Many times they would discuss matters through the HoloNet. However, it was time to discuss matters where all voices needed to be heard, not just those of the High Council. But even as he thought that, Stefan winced inwardly. He knew that there were some, perhaps more than that didn't know the constant attention he was giving to matters, and he knew several were probably hurt by what looked like his lack of action or thought or direction. He shook his head as he continued listening to the different parts of the conversation. We still have sources for crystals on Adega, Relin Volcom offered quietly, not to mention other resources we have that are not common knowledge. It could only be a matter of time, Lon Cartega told him from behind Stefan. Before that could be found out, Master Volcom. As it stands now, they now hold the old Sith homeworld of Korriban as well, and they show signs of expanding their trailward borders to line up with the space they control. Our facilities on Yavin 4 are now threatened. Don't forget our facilities on Ossus, Taekwondo added. They are threatened now, not just by the Imperial forces on Korriban. With the Hutt's expansion, their borders are dangerously close to Ossus. What concerns me the most, Chris Tianjin added from where she sat on the council ring, is not that our facilities are threatened or blocked from us, but another issue that stems from the Hutt's new sphere of influence. I must agree with Chris Tien on this. Stefan finally said to everyone, receiving nods from several masters that had remained silent and listened through most of the discussion. The fact that the majority of force wounds we've been feeling have come from that part of the galaxy is a serious concern. I must agree with Master Card, Green said from where he sat on a limb overlooking the group. We have not heard back from any of the Jedi Watchmen that we could afford to place in those areas, and none of those we've sent to investigate have returned or sent word back. We've not felt their death, but also have lost all sense of them in the Force. Then Canadius has been taking this very hard, especially since these are people he has hand-selected for the task. He looked around at the group and then looked straight at Stefan. I'm surprised he's not here. Stefan stood there and sighed. That's my fault, my friend. I had sent everyone a message about this convocation, but never received a response. It could have been missed in all the possible messages he has had to deal with, so he and Master Callista probably don't know of this happening. They are on their way here for my youngest son's birthday. I will take responsibility and discuss it with them when they arrive. He turned to look at the rest of the masters. Streen is absolutely correct. While the Empire is a threat, I feel that our greatest threat will be this unknown element in hut space. Yes, we have Jedi missing, and there are a great many wounds in the Force coming from that area. I do not know who or what is behind it, but we have a resource there that is threatened, unlike any of our resources for lightsaber crystals. It was Joe Kunn's turn to look towards him in recognition of what he referred to. The Valley of the Jedi. Precisely, Stefan said as he turned to his friend and nodded. There were several nods and whispers as he pulled all his thoughts together. To my knowledge, Master Canadius will have to correct me if I am mistaken. We have not attempted to send anyone to Rusan to see about the valley's condition. While we see to that, a threat from the Imperials must be addressed. He looked to Jill Kun again as he made this announcement. Chandrila. The Academy? One of the masters shouted. Chandrila is in the core worlds, another said. What are the possibilities of the Empire stretching that far? Do you seriously have to ask that question? Christiane asked him in return as she turned to look. If this is truly Isard's descendant, and as capable as Yasan was, which she is proving correct so far, then there is no limit to how far the Empire will try to expand. If how they defeated the Chiss is any indication, there is a good reason to believe they may push to Coruscant or even farther. They have practically broken the treaty now, and we have no information on her further plans. As it stands right now, we only have 3 locations for training students. Ah, yes! Stefan told them. The Academy on Chandrila, the Temple on Coruscant, and my Praxium here on Catan. Could I get a shout-out for Yast, please? 2 of those 3 locations are possibly threatened. Perhaps not immediately, but possible enough to consider some things very carefully. What are you proposing, Stefan? Nellis asked from where he stood behind Christiane's seat. Good to see you. We need to consider relocating our students, Stefan told the group at large. I know we've not had many students at the temple because of the events that led to Ari warning us to leave Coruscant, but we have some. Most of our students are on Chandrila, and the Empire will have to go past there to get to Coruscant. I propose we begin quietly looking to establish not just one facility, but several, galactic southwards of here towards the Outer Rim. My friends, the danger to us is just as great, if not greater, than the danger to the New Republic. We cannot afford to be lax, nor have most of our students in one place. That lesson we learned from the Sith shortly before our last battle should be well heeded now. They all nodded at Stefan's assessment, and he sighed, looking to the chrono on his wristcom. It's late. I propose that we return here in the morning. There is plenty of room at the Praxium for all of us, and I'm certain my students would appreciate the company. I will see you there in the morning. And with that, they began to disperse for the night. Attain, Fleet Facilities, the Nighthawk simulators. Once more, Captain Wesley Danik ordered, rubbing his eyes as he sat in the cockpit of the No. 1 simulator in the training room. The second battle group had returned home to the shipyards at Catane. Its fighter and bomber squadrons were refitting and retraining while the ships were going through their routine checks. Most of the squadron's training centers and bases were located on Catane, with auxiliary bases on Catan and other colony systems. Most of the fleet yards were in orbit around Catane herself, and the battle groups could link up there if the situation called for it. And there were no longer just 7 battle groups. After the events that had occurred at the Battle of Endor and the following conflicts that had arisen with the Bothans, it was the growing events within the Empire that had led to Jameson de Garmo posing the idea of expanding the size and number of Catan's battle groups as well as marine forces, to which the Clan Council unanimously agreed. 9 battle groups were now in existence, with a 10th being formed. They would be sorely needed. Word spread throughout the fleet now about how the New Republic had requested that Catan contribute a portion of their fleet to the group attempting to halt the Empire's advance into Ord Canifrey. Admiral Hathaway and her 3rd battle group had been tasked with this assignment. It had been a long and hard-fought battle that saw barely half of 3rd battle group limping into the shipyards of Catane's lower hemisphere to commence repairs. That had been several months ago, and 3rd Battle Group's remaining ships were still in the last stages of repair and replenishment, while replacement ships were being finished or reassigned. I'm just glad that Elia and Kim had made it out okay, Wes thought as he rubbed his eyes. A while after their flights with the Bothans, Elia Garza had been offered command of FS-107, the Lone Knight Squadron that Wesley had been executive officer of before taking command of the Blackhawks. She'd been told that an executive spot was open and immediately accepted when his brother, Kanan Danik, offered to apply. Hi, Tava! Good to see you. Skip, his newer exec, Commander Nick Calvo, called over the comm from Black Hawk 5. We've been through the simulation from what happened at Ord Canfrey several times, and we're way past the sack time order that Admiral Payne gave us. As much as I'm all for trying again, came the addition from Black Hawk 9, I have to agree with the XO here, Captain. We're all on edge as it is. Since when have you opted to err on the side of caution? Rosalind Stone asked from her place in the number 6 simulator. Since I'm having a hard time keeping my eyes open, Mark Stryker called back from number 9. That's enough, you two, Wesley said as he popped the canopy on a simulator. Everyone out. He turned and looked at his backseater and asked, We have pushed it today, haven't we? It isn't my place to say it, Senior Chief Tarrant said as he undid the chin strap of his helmet. But since you asked, we could have overdone the simulations today, Captain. I'm sure the Admiral would say 12 runs would be past the minimum of one afternoon. Wesley nodded and looked at his pilots gathering around his simulator cockpit. Okay, I have pushed too hard today, he finally admitted as he set his feet on the deck. Let's take tomorrow to rest up. The day after, the Admiralty talked about getting our Marine brethren in on our training sessions since they expanded their flight groups with Nighthawk-equipped squadrons to augment their bomber squadrons. Palpa will be in charge while I have to head to Fighter Command headquarters to see about coordinating that. Yes, what is it now, Stryker? How come he's in charge? Stryker asked as he lowered his hand. 1, he outranks you, Wesley started. And 2, you didn't want to be the exec, so there you have it. Oh, and one other thing, Mark. Yes, sir? When I return this time, don't let me see you with the pirate hat and eye patch again. Even if it might help with crew morale? Mark Stryker asked with a pained look on his face. I didn't say you couldn't do it, Mark, Wesley told him. I just don't want to see you in it and try to explain it away like you did last time. Aye, aye, sir, Mark said in that pirate voice, which got the squadron, including Wes, laughing. All right, folks. Dismissed. Catan. There's something else on your mind, Christiane Jin told him as they walked on the path with a few others from the High Council. You wouldn't have asked us to walk with you if that were the case. I could have, Stefan said. But you're correct, Chris. It's something that we need to discuss about Zan. Canadius? Roland asked. I thought he'd been doing remarkably well in intelligence. He has, Stefan said. He's been able to run it very well on his own, and I think it's a mistake that we've made. I've been meditating increasingly on matters, and I feel that he thinks there has been a lack of response and motion on our part. The High Council? Deanna asked. The Jedi as a whole, but yes, the Council as well. And I think that it is time we rectify the situation. You are saying that we need to make him part of the Council? Christiane asked. I am, Stefan said. And I think it's long overdue. He's been holding things together and may feel he's doing it alone. He's been out of the loop on the council meetings, and we need to mend this and get more things in motion. We've been on the sidelines too long, letting ourselves get caught up in all this just as the old order was before. Events are troubling me, and we no longer need to be in a reactive role. We have an ad starting in 4 minutes and 47 seconds. At least consider the ideas I've been talking about, he told them as they got to the fork that branched off to go to the Praxium and the other to his home. I'll see you at the Praxium in the morning. They parted, and Stefan did his best to clear his mind as he descended the short path to his family's home. It didn't come easy, and rarely did these past few years. Things had changed after Mist, for everyone, on a personal, family, and galactic level. Andrea was becoming increasingly the diplomat, with people seeking refuge after leaving systems that the Empire had taken over. Combined with the raising of Ian, who was close to 3 years old, and her responsibilities as a teacher to the young Marin Durzer in the Jedi arts, she was now beginning to understand the times that Stefan had to be away from the business he had to attend to and the missions he had to go on, and understood just how it had been for him to leave his family here on Catan. Dylan, in his own way, understood it as well. He and Kara had now made their home on Catan and welcomed their new daughter, Janai, into the world. In the times when Stefan was absent from the Praxium, he acted as headmaster to a degree. His growing abilities there and his actions during Renvar and Mist brought the council to grant him the title of master. Vrinius, almost to his 18th birthday, had completed his trials not long after the Battle of Mist, and had already been through several missions as a Jedi Knight. His time with Irina Cadre, Brink, and Nib Cadre's daughter had helped temper him. Stefan believed in him and was blessed by both sides. Brink had his misgivings about being a father, but he knew that if Rinius were anything like his father, Irina would be in good hands, and he needn't be concerned. The youngest of the Card's children, Catherine, also had not displayed as strong an ability in the Force as their other two blood children, Andrea and Rinius. She had grown up not resenting her siblings or her father's abilities as Jedi and took to learning different things from her mother. Later, she enrolled in medical courses to further what she had been taught. She had told Stefan and Jade that she felt that was where her calling lay, healing and tending to others in need. As she saw it, she could help them this way as her father and siblings protected them from those who sought to harm them. He still had not completely cleared his mind as he walked through the front door of their home. The lights were low in the living room, and there were no lights in the kitchen, music room, or his study, which told him that Catherine was already asleep for the night. She was the only child left at home, since Rinius spent most of his time at the Praxium of his own choice. She was in Andrea's old room now, and the other bedrooms had been kept for the grandchildren. I was wondering how much longer you would be, Jade said as she looked up from the book she was reading on her side of the bed. For our first meeting, you were gone for quite a long time. There's a lot to talk about, Stefan told her as he walked into their closet and removed his belt. Catherine already asleep? A few hours ago. There's something seriously troubling you, my love. I could never hide anything from you, Stefan said as he finished changing into something for sleep and climbed into bed. With all of this happening with the Hutts and their expansion, I'm concerned about Einar. He should be able to handle things, Jade told him. You said he had grown in his abilities. I didn't mention only that, he reminded her. He was also very reluctant to regain what he'd lost of himself. 3 years later, I wonder if I should have let him go off again. You know what Ari would have said, Jade told him as she curled up against his chest. You can't rush what he has to go through. I'm still concerned. Barab 1 is on the other side of Nalhutta from us, and it's in the middle of their territory now. With the force wounds we've been feeling, I don't know if it would have affected him there, if he'd see about who was responsible, or worse, if he was caught up in it. And that is the end of chapter 4. Yes, I think reading to chapter 5 is the good call. I hope you're doing well, Tubba. We have an ad starting in 16 seconds. And I'm going to take a chance to read, to catch up on chat, and get some water. Well, I appreciate you lurking. Okay. Yep, I think reading another chapter is a good call. Well, yeah, we're in an ad. Minute and 20 seconds. Wait a second. It's gonna end in about 30 seconds. And we're back from our ad. I was just catching up on reading chat. Good to see you here, East and Tubba and everybody else who wanted it. We're going to continue and read chapter 5, which will be the last one. Oh, sorry. I will be reading tonight. We are, for those of you who just came in, we're reading a story called Age of Darkness, and we started with chapter 2 tonight. If you want to check out the stuff that I was reading in the last stream, we read the short story called To Honor the Departed, as well as the prologue for Age of Darkness. Oh. Alright. Chapter 5. And I'm telling you, General. Mick was out on the balcony with a data pad and a comlink. There aren't enough Jedi left for you to keep leaning on them. They've sworn to protect the Republic, so they'll give it their best shot, but you'll be signing their death warrant if you keep pushing like this. Really, Colonel Din? Maxwell's voice was as placid and calm as ever. Must you be so dramatic? It's not as though I'm asking them to fight a war for us. I'm merely seeking their aid in areas where a regular soldier might not be sufficient. Right, Mick snapped. Like suicide missions and ultra-deep cover-ups. Do you realize that knights are disappearing around the galaxy right now? They're running thin as it is. Yes, Maxwell dismissed Mick's arguments. Perhaps a brief respite is in order. However, I have the security of the galaxy to consider. And what sense does it make to continue donating funds and supplies to an organization that cannot deliver? Mick was hot to retort before Maxwell cut him off. Which reminds me, the general said, your consulting fee has been deposited into your account, and yet I've no news of your recent mission to Ober Sky. How is the Empire's library world this time of year? Busy, Mick growled, but Maxwell had just shown part of his hand, and Micron wouldn't push it. But you'll have your report by midday. Oh. Maxwell seemed surprised, but he covered it well enough that anyone who wasn't Microned in might not have picked it up. Excellent, Colonel. You may give it to my assistant. That is all. The transmission ended. Maxwell liked to have the last word these days. Mick ensured the sliding doors were closed before loosing a string of profanity that would have made a Hutt blush. Maxwell was in on it, or at least partially in on it. He knew the mission had gone south. He'd probably known before Mick and the crew had even returned to Coruscant. He hoped to gloat, but instead he'd tipped his hand. It wasn't proof, but the slip-up was enough for Micron to put the general on his suspect list. Nerf herder. Ari's voice jumped to the forefront of his mind. Watch your language out there. Sorry, Princess. The rogue sent back as he shut down his datapad and returned to the apartment. Ari was sitting with Evelina, playing a game they'd made up in which they used the Force to try to move a ball into the opposing player's cup. Each player had a ball and a block at their disposal. They had to control both at the same time. The block could cover their goal while simultaneously attempting to get their ball into the other opponent's goal. Evelina was good at the game. Maxwell knew the mission was a failure, Mick said without preamble. I haven't spoken to anyone outside the crew and you since I got back, and I haven't submitted my report yet. Whoa. Ari stood, and Evelina giggled as her ball sailed into her mother's goal. What are you saying? Maxwell is working for the Imps? I'm not saying anything. Mick held his hands up. Only that he's got the information he shouldn't or couldn't have gotten through normal channels. Whether he's on the Empire's payroll or they're just feeding him information is anyone's guess. Or maybe he's somehow connected to the mercenaries the Empire was using to protect the records hall. I don't know. I know he's up to something, and it's starting to smell bad. Of all the... Ari began, but stopped when she noticed Evelina was paying close attention to what her parents were discussing. We need to look into this, Micron. Like, yesterday. I know, the rogue agreed, but we might have to do the legwork ourselves. Talon's dropped off the face of the galaxy, Canadius is working hard on his first gray hairs, and Nick and Vince are hardly subtle about, well, anything. Well, we can't cancel this trip, Rogue, Ari said. Stefan seemed to think we needed to be there. I get the feeling this isn't going to be just a birthday party. Aww, Evelina groaned. You guys are gonna do boring grown-up stuff, aren't you? I don't like it any more than you do, little princess. Mick winked at his daughter. But, yeah, probably. When we get back, then, Ari nodded to herself. I'll see what I can dig up. As the person who put him in charge, well, owing me doesn't begin to cover it. I just had a terrible thought, Mick said as he leaned against the couch. Evelina, don't listen in on this, okay, sweetie? She made a noise of exasperation but nodded anyway and began playing the game against herself. For a second, Mick marveled at the girl's concentration and control. He shook his head and turned to his wife. You don't think he's still sweet on you and trying to get rid of me, do you? He said. Ari laughed out loud. If he is, he's doing an abysmal job of it. Mercenaries against Mick Rondin and his crew of rogues? He's not stupid enough to think that would work. Mick just shrugged. If you say so, Princess. As I said, Ari insisted verbally, we'll check it out when we get back. We need to get down to the hangar. Zan and Callie are waiting. Yeah, Mick nodded. You noticed something funny about those two when we spoke last? Like they were hiding something? Evelina stopped her game and looked at her parents. They want to fight you, she said, matter-of-factly. But They don't want to hurt you. They want to help you? You think your sister and Zan want to fight us? Ari cast a worried look at her daughter. What makes you say that? They were thinking it really loudly when you guys were talking, Evelina explained as she grabbed her stuffed tauntaun and pillow. Grown-ups are so weird. But they weren't here, Princess, Mick said as he knelt beside his daughter. We talked to Zan and Callie on the comm unit. I know that, Daddy. Evelina smiled. It wasn't very loud, but I did hear them. It was like they were yelling from really far away. Is it still eavesdropping if you didn't mean to listen? Eavesdropping, Mick helped her. And no, sweetie, it's okay. Thank you for telling us. The rogue looked at Ari and arched an eyebrow at his wife. There was no mental message, but the question was unmistakable. Ari shrugged in reply and then spelled out MEPLUSYOU and shrugged again. Mick pondered the implication. Evelina was showing exponential growth in the Force every day. He knew the kid would be strong, but he hadn't expected just how strong. Kevin had been strong, but nothing like this. Then again, Kevin was conceived before Ari realized she was the Phoenix, and well before Mick had been chosen as the conduit. It was evident as he looked at the situation objectively for the first time. Evelina Scarlet Din had the potential to be one of the most, if not the most powerful Force-sensitive in the known galaxy. The weight of that notion gave the rogue pause, and his daughter noticed the look in his eye. Daddy? Her little voice quavered. Is something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Mick shook his head and scooped Evelina up in his arms. Never, Evelina, he promised. I just had a thought, is all. And Daddy's not used to having those, Ari joked as she picked up her satchel and walked up behind him. Mommy, Daddy's right here. Ari and Mick both laughed. I know, Princess. He knows I'm only teasing. Yeah, Mick said as he put his daughter down. It would take a lot more than that to hurt me. You ready to go, Princess? Yes, both Ari and Evelina answered. Together, the three of them left the house at the presidential level of the palace and made their way to the private hangar where the Firebird waited. Sorry. I am slouching. There we go. Pain. Nick Calvo kept looking over his shoulder as he made his way down the corridor of the pilot's quarters. Mark, behind him, cast a frown at his XO. What? Stryker finally asked. Have I got something on my face? Just remembering the last time Cap went off and left me in charge, Nick said, rubbing the back of his head. Why don't you just go ahead and I'll walk behind you? Hi, Roslyn! At ease, sir, Mark sighed. It's never any fun to mutiny when you have permission. Stryker kicked the wall with his booted foot for good measure. It rang hollow when Rosalind Stone came out of her quarters. Damn it, Trouble, she fumed. I'm trying to sleep in here. My bad. Mark backed away, his hands up. If you get back in there and get your beauty rest, it looks like you could use it. To his credit, Mark was ducking before the last words were out of his mouth. Rosalind's water bottle bounced off the opposite wall, and Mark took off running with Stone close on his tail, with murder in her eyes. It's like daycare, Calvo thought as he shook his head in defeat. Only they gave the kids a pound of spice and a pile of guns. Coruscant. Micron started the warm-up sequence as Ari and Evelina finished putting their things in the captain's quarters. Out of the forward viewport, he could see Zan and Callista crossing the hangar deck in travel clothes and dragging their luggage behind them. The rogue let the ship's computer take over the warm-up routines and headed for the boarding ramp. He arrived as Callista and Zan reached the bottom. Hey, you two, Mick said. The guest cabin is set up, so you can drop your stuff there. Zan, I could use a hand strapping down Rhenius' birthday present in the cargo hold. And Callie, your sister and Ari should be in the lounge by now. Evelina wanted to make sure you saw her first. The kid's been missing you like crazy. I don't know why. Hey, Carl. Good to see you. I see you in the corner. Hello, sir. Callista went to kiss the rogue on the cheek, but punched him in the shoulder instead. Uh-huh, she said. Sure thing, old man. She gave him a quick hug and then started down the circular corridor to where she could hear Ari and Evelina talking. Canadius. Mick nodded. The Mando grunted a quick, sir, but he grouped Mick's forearm in a warrior's greeting nonetheless. He dropped his gear in the guest cabin and followed Mick to the cargo hold where a new speeder bike was waiting to be strapped down. Something eating you, Zan? Mick arched an eyebrow. Not that you're the most talkative Mando I've met, but you seem a bit tense. Zan hid his initial urge to frown at the Corellian inside before shrugging. It's been a long day and weeks lately. You know how it is, making sure the universe doesn't collapse in on itself, he said. Right. Mick nodded as he gathered some straps from a nearby storage locker. The rogue began clamping down the speeder back to the floor grating. I take it Intelligence has been putting in the extra hours? Any new word on Iceheart Jr.'s plans? Zan frowned as he grabbed some straps and began to work on cinching the bike down. No, I've received initial reports only, and then crews begin to disappear. I just sent my 25th crew into imp space 2 weeks ago. Sharon told me they managed to insert into Bastion, but who knows how long that line of contact will last. And Maxell keeps pressuring me for more crews to be sent elsewhere. He groaned a bit as he tightened the last strap he was working on. Yeah, Mick sighed as he clamped down the last of his. I have some information, well, more of a hunch. You have enough on your plate, but you should know. Arya and I will run our investigation on General Maxell when we return. I ran a mission for the New Republic to Obersky a few days ago. Took the crew. We were going to try and pull some files from the Imps databanks. Anyway, the Imps knew we were going to be there. It was an ambush, and Maxell seemed to know how things went south before I even got back. Figures, Dan grunted as he began working on the next strap. He's always roaming it in when we lose contact or fail, but never gives any assistance and expects more from us in return. He sighed again. But I don't think he's really the one responsible for all of this. Just a pawn that the Senate or the Chief of State can use well. You know, Maxell. Anything to show superiority over others, he's all over. Plus, he's had it in for me since that dinner party all those years ago when I was introduced to you lot. I don't think he cares much for either of us, Mick agreed. But still, he's gotta know something. How could he have known our mission got scrapped before we even got back? Micron waved away the question. Never mind. You've got enough on your plate. There, that should do it. The rogue proclaimed as he stood. Think Stefan's gonna have a heart attack when I give his boy the keys to this machine? Zan shrugged. Renius hasn't been a boy in my mind for years now. Besides, if Jade doesn't decide to kill you, I think Stefan will be fine. He's also got other things to worry about. His tone noticeably cooled when Stefan's name was mentioned. Mick leaned back on the bike's seat and folded his arms. Okay, Canadius, he said, point blank. You're a terrible dancer. There's something on your mind, and I'm calling you on it. What's the deal? I know Stefan's called a big convocation on Gatan of all the masters, and I notice how you get cold when I mention his name. Not that you've ever been a ball of warmth, but this is new. Zan's eyes flashed angrily before he resumed a passive mask. A convocation? Really? Hard seemed too busy dealing with students to ensure I got that message. But then again, when you leave the operation of the Order in the hands of a decidedly non-diplomatic Shiboisi, things can get lost in the shuffle. I wasn't aware that Stefan had abdicated his position. Mick let some of the ice enter his voice. The way I hear things, the council still meets regularly. Maybe not in person, but they do still meet. You think he's not doing his job? The rogue started walking towards the cockpit, indicating Zan should follow. Catan isn't Coruscant, Corellian, Zan said, finally voicing his anger. So the council meets. Great. Do they actually have a hand in keeping things afloat? Do they haggle with the Senate and the Department of Defense from their secure positions elsewhere? Do they send diplomats and ambassadors to the Hutts or the Criffing rat cans? Have they witnessed so many memorial services lately that death has become standard Criffing practice? He followed Mick, but hung well back. Yeah, they've been so active as to lend me a hand. Mick's hands flew over the controls as he slid into the pilot seat. The pre-flight routine was so ingrained that he barely even had to look. It was good, though. It kept him from knocking his son-in-law into the wall. Listen, kid. I know you've been under a lot of stress, and I know your area of expertise is intelligence, but you don't know everything. I trust Stefan. He's never steered the Jedi wrong before, and I don't believe he'd steer them wrong now. Do you think you're spread thin? I'd wager the rest of the Order isn't doing much better. At least hear him out before you overheat your turbolasers. Zan was close to cracking now, his voice very tight. Who said he was doing the steering? Since Mist, every Jedi worth their salt decided to shab off. So maybe I've been fighting a battle for nothing. He rolled his eyes. Man, the malaise is so thick I could cut it with a piece of flimsy. I'm sorry? Sarcasm in Mick's voice was evident. We decided to shab off? For an intelligence officer, you're not that bright. What have I been up to for the past 3 years? I've been running missions with the crew back and forth between Hutt Space and the Remnant, trying to find missing Jedi and Force knows what else. Ari's had every general, corporal, colonel, and cook on the column almost daily asking her advice on military ops and the like. And we've been raising a daughter. Yeah, it's been a real vacation. You've been off fulfilling some damn Corellian hollow fantasy, that's what you've been doing. Oh, and newsflash, Rogue? He growled. Han Solo, you ain't. That's it! Mick stood and grabbed Zan by the collar, slamming him into the bulkhead. You! But the Rogue stopped as suddenly as he started. He let go of Zan and looked back out the cockpit hatch. Get us in the air, he said, taking off towards the lounge and his daughter. Zan smirked at the retreating Corellian master. Fine by me, Captain Asshat, he yelled before making his way to the controls. Callista glanced around for a moment as she stepped into the lounge. It had been a while since she'd set foot on the ship. Spotting Ari and Evelina at the game table, she headed that way, only to be plowed into by the 3-year-old. Ooh, sorry. Gotta take a drink of water. There we go. Callie! Evelina cried, leaping into her big sister's arms. I've missed you! Callie's breath was driven from her lungs as Evelina's full weight hit her chest. I've missed you too, Evika. I hope you're doing all right. She hugged her sister to her chest for a moment. Better now, Evelina smiled. I keep beating Mom at our game. That got a grin from Callista. Are you now? You must have been practicing then. She smiled and shifted Evelina to her hip as she wandered over to sit at the hollow table. She has. Ari smiled at Callista. How are you, dear heart? It feels like I haven't seen you in ages. Keeping that Mando of yours out of trouble? A grin spread across Callista's face before she sobered. Yeah, I've been better. I guess I can't complain, though. I've got some time off to spend with family. It's been hectic around the temple, even considering how few knights and masters are assigned there. Master Healer isn't the easiest of jobs, Ari agreed. I should know. But it would be best to remember to take at least some time for yourself. Learn to delegate, sweetie. Yeah, Evelina nodded enthusiastically. Daddy says delegate means getting other people to do your work for you. Callista sighed momentarily and gently ruffled Evelina's hair before smoothing it absently with her fingers. That's rather difficult when there aren't that many to delegate to. Point taken, Ari nodded sadly. The Jedi can't train students as fast as they're losing knights. Mick and his crew were on a mission to Ober Sky to see what they could dig up on the Empire, but that mission got scrapped. Has Zan had any leads lately? Not from what he's told me. The latest mission was inserted okay, but we haven't heard anything since. They're supposed to check in with the intelligence office in 6 hours. She frowned. It just worries me that we're spread so thin. Me too, Ari sighed. Me too. The Jedi will come back, Evelina insisted. You'll see. The 3-year-old grabbed her game pieces and shoved them into Callista's hands. Play with me? Callista glanced at Ari briefly and shrugged, leaning towards the table with Evelina still on her lap. You'll have to tell me how to play, Evika. It's easy, she replied. This cup is your goal. She gave Callista a small wooden cup. This is your ball, and this is your block. She pointed She pointed to a small wooden ball and block just big enough to cover the mouth of the cup. You use the force to try to get your ball into my cup while using your block to keep my ball from going into your cup. Easy. Evelina sat beside Ari and used the force to levitate her pieces. The first one's to 5 points wins! Callista laughed and nodded, glancing towards Ari with a shrug as she levitated her ball and block. For once, she was glad of all the times she'd had to focus on more than one thing during surgery. The real trick, Ari said as she watched the girls play, is trying to carry a conversation. To that end, I'm sensing much tension from you and your husband. Is there something you're not telling me, Callie? The game pieces fell instantly, and Evelina's force signature grew suddenly cold. Zan and Daddy are fighting, he whispered, tears forming in her eyes. Callista frowned in concentration as she focused on the game. We're frustrated, mostly. We feel like we've been left out of the loop on some things, and with the members of the council spreading to the winds, she shrugged. At Evelina's words, Callista's piece shook violently as her attention was diverted. Just then, Micron entered the lounge and scooped Evelina into his arms. Shh, princess, he said. It's okay. Dan and I were just talking. Callista looked up sharply at Mick as he entered the lounge, her game pieces clattering to the table as she did so. Ari cast a questioning glance at the rogue, who just shook his head. Dan's gonna get us in the air, Mick said. Katan's about 8 hours away. I suggest we all get some rest while we're in hyperspace. And with that, he took Evelina and headed towards the captain's cabin. I'd better go check in on Mick and Evelina, Ari said, standing. She looked at Callista as though to say, men, and headed aft. Callista opened her mouth to respond, but Ari was gone. She sighed and shook her head, muttering as she headed towards the cockpit. Mick returned a few minutes later. Dan had gotten them into open space. The rogue slid into his seat and took control. I'll get us into hyperspace. The trip will take 8 hours. Why don't you get some rack time? At that moment, Callista stuck her head through the hatch. Ah, there you are, Zanika. She leaned over and kissed him gently. Dan grunted, fine. He stood up, stretched, and began to head toward the main hatchway before pausing. Next time, Rogue, if you want to rough me up, make sure you keep one hand on your blaster. Mandos don't learn 50 ways to kill a sentient with a drinking straw for nothing. He smirked before kissing his wife quickly and said, Keep an eye on Mr. Congeniality here. When we reach Catan, I want him nice and calm. And then he stalked off. Your hubby really wants me to break him in half, doesn't he? Mick sighed as Callista slid into the co-pilot's chair. He wants a fight, Mick said. That much is sure, but I'm not doing it with my daughter just down the corridor. I'm sorry, sweetie, he quickly added, turning to Callista. I mean, my baby daughter. Callista nodded. I can understand that, Meg. But think, it's been pretty much just us on Coruscant. He's had to handle everything himself. Can you blame him if he feels hung out to dry? Have you guys ever heard of a comlink? Mick snapped, a little too harshly. I'm sorry, Callista. I don't mean to be harsh. Not to you. But this conversation would be best held with all parties involved present, and not in front of Evelina. The rogue set the course, and the Firebird lurched into hyperspace. It's 8 hours to Catan. Get some rack time. I'll wake everyone up before we get there. She frowned. If you're sure. Yes, dear heart, Mick said, kissing her forehead. Get some sleep. I doubt we're going to have that luxury much longer. And, with that, he headed aft to join Ari and Evelina in the captain's quarters. And that's the end of chapter 5. We have an ad starting in 1:45 seconds. I was planning to stop there because it is 9. So, 9 o'clock. Hope you guys enjoyed. And hey, look, my camera didn't wig out 3 times. I think I fixed it. Yay! The last time I was streaming, my camera cut out at least twice, maybe 3 times. Figured out why. It should be fixed, hopefully. But haven't noticed any serious lag, or hasn't had the camera cut out, so that's good. So, you're welcome, Taba. I know, not the most cozy of chapters, but we're getting there. It's this story can be a little heavy, but it's got some good action in it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think my next stream is next Wednesday. Let me double check that. Let's see. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. My next stream is next Wednesday, February 5th. I will be playing some SWTOR. So I haven't exactly decided what I'm doing next Wednesday. The last time I did SWTOR, I think I was doing some chapters, or actually I think I was doing no, I was doing dynamic outside of last Wednesday. I was doing, I think the stream before that was dynamic encounters. So I'll figure out something. If you guys have any suggestions, please let me know in Discord. Always up for community stuff, or flashpoints, or whatever you guys want to do. I like doing group stuff, most of the time. So, yes. Yeah, that would be awesome. If you need any help in the meantime, let me know. I don't remember how close you were, but I know you were getting pretty close. So, yeah, if you need any help, let us know, and we can help you out. So I will see you guys on. Oh, nice, 70, 78. Cool. So we could do like a flash part or two and get you there. Yeah, let me know. I'll have to check my schedule because this weekend's a little busy, but we can coordinate. So I will see you guys on Wednesday for some SWTOR shenanigans. It could be various things: flashpoints, story stuff, dynamic encounters, dailies. Could be all kinds of stuff. I mean, okay, here's the better question. Do you want help? That's the better question. But that's my plan for next Wednesday. I really do hope that you guys enjoyed the story tonight. It's this particular one can get pretty intense. So hold on to your hats. Hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your week. We've been getting snow up here, so stay warm, bundle up. I'm gonna go see if there's anybody that I could raid. Maybe. Let's see. Let's see. Somebody that I haven't raided in a while. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know. I'm looking for Survivor Squad or anybody like that. Let's see. You know what? I'm gonna go say hi to Arc Fox. I was just looking at his stuff. There he is. Give me just a second while I check stuff. I'm looking at the other screen. Alright, you guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you, even if you were just lurking and listening. Much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed. Please come back and see me again next time, whether it's reading, Twitter, or writing. Would love to see you. Have an awesome night. And please hang around and show some Archives love to ArcFox, which is, we're going to go say hi to them. They are currently building minis. It looks like they're doing Lego. So, I'm going to get this raid going. That first raid command is for anybody that is subscribed to the channel, because it has subscriber emotes. And the second one that I'm about to put up is for anybody that follows the channel, or it has just been here watching. You can grab that one. Oh goodness, trying to copy and it's not working. Have a great night, you guys, and I will see you next time.